بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم. Under the chapter of his alayhi salatu wasalam's missions, we had reached and we had just gone over the last paragraph of the Jinn of Nasibin came to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and accepted Islam when he was 50 years old and 3 months. So this is almost 10 years after being delegated and designated as a Prophet of Allah. The Nasibiyin, and in English it's pronounced the Nasibiyin, or Nasibin. These particular jinn, it was a group of jinn. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala references them in the Holy Quran in Surah Al-Ahqaf, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they heard the Quran. There are various opinions on whether this was on one occasion or whether this happened over multiple occasions. And there is a difference of opinion of whether the Prophet ﷺ met the actual jinn or they simply heard the Quran from the Prophet ﷺ and accepted Islam. There is a riwayat where Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he mentions that the Prophet ﷺ actually went out to meet this group of jinns. Okay? And that was the actual intention. And so this happened after the Prophet ﷺ's return from Ta'if. When the Prophet ﷺ went to Ta'if to deliver the message, and the Prophet ﷺ was ridiculed, he was abused, and on the way back, the Prophet ﷺ met this group. And the background to this is that after Isa ﷺ, in what is known as Zamanul Fatra, the period where there's an absence of revelation between one prophet and another, it was a lengthy period, and during that period, because there was no prophet of Allah, the last prophet being Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, before the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, there was the practice of the evil jinns of making their way up to the skies, okay, and trying to listen to what the angels would be discussing. And they would then hear snippets of this is going to happen, a sentence here, a sentence there, this rain is going to occur, and these jinns would come back down to the earth, and with those that would practice sorcery and would practice black magic, they would give them information. And this was a common practice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran that once the nubuwwah of the Prophet ﷺ was established, there was a new system in the skies, that when these jinns would ascend to try and listen, there would be some sort of fire that was thrown towards them and that would actually affect them. So when this started to happen, the Nasibin were a chieftain leader group within the jinn sect. For those that are there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has many creations that He has created. So we have the human kind, you have the jinn kind, you have the animal kingdom, and it's possible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has other creation that He has created that others are not aware of. Right? The universe is very not, I'm not advocating for aliens, I'm just saying that Allah has creations, right? And one of those creation is the kingdom of the jinn. Okay, and this is absolutely established that jinns exist. Their existence is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about them pretty openly in the Quran. قُلْ أُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ أَنَّهُ اسْتَمَعَ نَفَرٌ مِّنَ الْجِنِّ فَقَالُوا إِنَّا سَمِعْنَا قُرْآنًا عَجَبًا is also in relation to this incident. So this particular entity are also like mankind, in the sense that mankind is mukallaf, we are responsible, and we have to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have free will, and we choose whether to do right or whether to do wrong. Similarly is jinn kind, that they also are mukallaf, they also have the option of doing good and bad. It's up to them. And the Prophet ﷺ, that's why I corrected something that I said in the morning today, where I said the Prophet ﷺ was sent as to all of kind, not just mankind. So the Prophet ﷺ's nubuwwah was for man and jinn. So his nubuwwah, alayhi salatu wasalam, was not specific to humans, was not specific to a community within. So you had certain prophets in the past that they were only sent to a community. And at times there were multiple prophets on the earth, one in one community, one in another community. But the Prophet ﷺ, the uniqueness of him is he is universal. Universal in terms of who to and in terms of time. So the Prophet ﷺ is universal in terms of whoever is responsible in the law, man and jinn, they both are responsible in believing in Muhammad ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ is universal in terms of time, that he wasn't specific to the Arabian Peninsula 1435 or 45 years ago. The Prophet ﷺ's nubuwwah will carry on until the Day of Judgment. So there is no end to that. So he's universal as a prophet. So the jinns they are even till today responsible to believing in Allah and Muhammad ﷺ. Some of them believe, some of them don't. Just like within mankind, you have some that believe and some that don't. You have some men that are good, you have some, and when I say men, women, everything is included. When you have some that are good and some that are evil. Within jinn, there are some that are good and some that are evil. And just like man can cause harm to man and to jinn, we just don't know how, but meaning most people don't know, but we can cause harm. Similarly, jinn can cause harm internally within themselves and to man as well. So it works in a very different way. But khair, we're not going to go into jinn stories and possessions and stuff like that. We're going to stick to what we're talking about at the moment. Okay, so this group was a senior group within the jinns, the Nasibin, and they would ascend the skies and they would bring back this information, then feed it to the four. And so this is how people would worship evil shayateen. That as a sorcerer, as someone who would be able to give some information about the future, others would come to them. Allah has prohibited through the Prophet ﷺ, categorically the concept of fortune telling is prohibited in Islam. It's mal'oon, it's cursed by the Messenger ﷺ. There is no permissibility in that. Horoscopes, not allowed in Islam. It is a form of shirk. Okay? Going to someone who claims to know the future, haram, completely haram. So absolutely, in that time, in the absence of nubuwwah, when you had these individuals who would be able to give pockets of information that would come out to be true in the future, people would flock to them. So this was almost like a means of power for these jinn, that if we can get information from there, pass it on, they'll keep coming back to us. So once they realized that something was being thrown at them, they had a little meeting. And the hadith actually is explicit. It says that they said, we must now find out what is happening. Because it's like it's not the same, but in economic system, once there's something that's a problem in that cycle, you have to sort that out. Otherwise, how does this carrying on turning? So the jinns are worried. They're saying to themselves, what do we do? Because we have a whole host of people, a whole group of people that are coming to us, taking information for us, is giving us our power. They are worshipping us. We're like deities in their eyes. And again, you may ask, well, didn't they know? Of course they knew about Allah. But just like you have men that are corrupt, you have jinn that are corrupt. Right? So these jinns, they decide, and it's mentioned in the books of tafsir, they decide that they're going to roam the earth until they find what is the cause, because it has to be something here that's affecting it there. So something is happening here that's not allowing us to receive information anymore. And as they were traversing the earth, finally they hear about in Tihama, in the Arabian Peninsula, that there is someone who has made the claim to nubuwwah. And these jinns made the attachment. We've been so long without a prophet of Allah, the access to the heavens made no, there's wahi isn't there. Now that revelation is going to start taking place, there's a protection in the heavens. There's a protection. Allah is not allowing us to take information from there anyway. So they decide in Surah Al-Ahqaf, I'll quickly look at the verse and read it out to you. They decide to come and listen to what the Messenger ﷺ has to preach. What is it? What is it about this message that's so important that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is divinely protecting it? And it says, وَإِذْ صَرَفْنَا إِلَيْكَ نَفَرًا مِنَ الْجِنِّ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقُرْآنِ, that when we turned to you a group of jinn so that they may listen to the Qur'an. Now here's where there's a difference of opinion. Was it that they just came and listened, or was it that they requested an audience from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala says that it was a request of an audience. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually said, which one of you is willing to come? I have to go and meet some jinns. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked the first time, and everybody's like, there's no answer. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked the second time. What is that? So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked the third time, and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, I'll come, Ya Rasulullah. So the Prophet ﷺ went to some area that was away from the vicinity, and he, alayhi salatu wasalam, it's very explicit. He said, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud says, the Prophet ﷺ drew some lines on the earth, and he said, stay inside here. I'm going to go forward. You don't come outside of this area. This is your boundary. So you stay here. I have to go and do what I need to do. And so that's one riwayah, that the Prophet ﷺ actually then went, he met this group, a group less than 10, it was 9 jinns. And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud says, I just saw some strange black figures descending, some language taking place in between themselves, that they were talking. And I even thought that, this is not, and then I remembered, no, the Prophet ﷺ told me to stay here. So I didn't move. I stayed exactly where the Prophet ﷺ told me. Because afterwards the Prophet ﷺ said that, did you move from here? So he said, I thought about it, but I didn't. It was a good thing you didn't. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to stop them from taking you. So this boundary was for the protection of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. So the Prophet ﷺ goes and meets this group, and the da'wah that's given is through the recitation of the Quran. And obviously there's some dialogue that takes place. They actually, in one riwayat it mentions that they had a court case. They had a jurisprudent difference, that something had happened internally and they couldn't come to a conclusion. So they said, Ya Rasulullah, you decide for us the fate. So the Prophet said to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud that I acted as a judge in one of their cases as well, and I made a judgment of what I thought was correct in a particular case for them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that فَلَمَّا حَضَرُوهُ, that when they came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, قَالُوا أَنصِتُوا, they said, listen. So all they wanted to do was listen to the Quran. فَلَمَّا قُضِيَ وَلَّوْا إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِمْ مُنذِرِينَ, when they finished from listening to the Holy Quran, they returned to the people, munzirin, as one who were warned, meaning they accepted Islam. So the message that the Prophet ﷺ gave is something that they accepted. قَالُوا, and what did they say? يَا قَوْمَنَا, they went back to the jinn kind, and they said, "O our people, inna sami'na kitaban unzila min ba'di Musa." Indeed, we have heard a speech, a book that has been revealed after the revelation to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, musaddiqan lima bayna yaday, which is testifier to what is in front of it, ila al-haq, which calls towards righteousness or the truth, wa ila tariqin mustaqim, and towards the right path. And then there's some more that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions of them giving them da'wah to their own people. So this happened straight after, or on the return actually, from Ta'if, and the Prophet ﷺ had just gone over the age of 50 years. And this is when, so again, there's just some context of, because I overheard some people saying as I was leaving, I said, what is this jinn accepting Islam? Some brothers were discussing, they didn't understand. So I thought, let me just clarify that the Prophet ﷺ was sent as a prophet to all of kind, including jinns. And their responsibility is to accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's message from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there are many accounts of the mashayikh, the salafus salihin, and their encounters with jinns, both good, both evil. Just like we have humans that are good and evil, you have jinns that are good and evil. The bottom line being with jinns is that if you don't disturb them, they don't disturb you. That's the bottom line. That you stay away from sort of disturbing them, and they usually don't have no issues with humans. They carry on in their realm of existence. Some people are like fascinated by this concept. One guy said to me that I just wanted to see a jinn. I'd go to sleep every night, but before going to sleep, I'd read Surah Jinn over and over and over and over, just so that I can see a jinn. And some, there's a intrigue of that. Generally, the intrigue or the encounter isn't very pleasant afterwards. So it's better, that we don't interfere. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them their responsibilities. Allah has given us our responsibilities. Yes, there are occasions when jinns that are mischievous and they cause mischief, they do unprovoked can try and cause harm to certain people, and then it's the job of those individuals who know how to deal with the jinns, that they address the situation. It's not for everybody. It's not an entertainment thing as well. I see this lots nowadays on social media sites, on YouTube, of Raki performing his thing, and it's not entertainment. It's honestly, it's not something that we should be videoing and having. It's not a movie. It's not a horror movie that you're watching. This is serious stuff, and like I said, the more you put yourself in that way, the more likelihood that you are attracting yourself towards something untowards. And so that's a different discussion. But yeah, so that happens when the Prophet ﷺ was 50 years of age. I did say we're going to move on to the next Prophet. Inshallah, we'll do that tomorrow. That at 51 years and 9 months, the Prophet ﷺ was made to travel and make the night journey. Inshallah, we will discuss that in a bit of detail tomorrow. The travel to Bayt al-Maqdis. And the significance of that from an Islamic perspective, and why still till today, obviously, Masjid al-Aqsa holds such a dear place in the hearts of the believers. Inshallah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills, then we'll deal with that tomorrow. Inshallah. Jazakumullah. Subhanallah, bihamdi, subhanallah, bihamdi, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Jazakumullah khairan.